This is a test for the PowerJack. Right there, it's a modified sine wave 1200 watt continuous, 2400 watt peak. Okay, it's a pretty old one, and that's pretty much what it is. We got a 210 amp hour deep cycle golf cart batteries, which is 2400 watt hours of battery, and we got some good cables with 150 amp circuit breaker by Busman, and you can see here the big cable, 4/0 4/0 black cable, and then we have what is the other one, 2/0 red cable which goes to there, and then we have a 4/0 going up to the battery. Okay, so let's do a test. We're going to do an efficiency test with this hairdryer, only going up to low power, which is about 700 watts, I think. Okay, so let's go. Right now we got 14.1 watt. That's the idle power. So coming out of this guy here, we got 2 watts. Okay, right there, 2 watts, and that's all this guy coming to here. The other 12 watts, I think, is inside the inverter. Okay, so let's see what happens. 14 watts of battery driving this load here. All right, here goes. At 700 watts, and this, what is that? That's about 670 watts going into the hairdryer, and the battery has to pump 700 watts. So the efficiency is 665 watts divided by 706 watts. Okay, so we got 12 volts that the battery is dropped down to. There's no solar panels hooked up right now, so that's disconnected. So nothing's coming down to recharge the batteries. And there's no other load except for the fan, which goes right here. That's just keeping the inverter cool. What's our voltage here? Let's find out. Now AC voltage is, let's see, 113 volts, I think. Is that what it is? Low, high. 660 watts. That's the load that is seen by the inverter into the hairdryer, which is this guy right here. Okay, and the battery is pumping out 691 watts in order to produce 660 watts into the hairdryer. Let's see what the voltage is. Voltage, I think that's the voltage. 113. Okay. So 113 volts, 60 hertz, and that's about 700 watts. And let's go back to watts over here. And watts, there it is, 640 658 right now. 658 to 690, 700. 11.9 on the battery. Okay, turning this guy off. Let's find out what the idle current is. Turning it off. Bam. And it's dropping down to about 10 watts of idle power that the battery has to provide for the idle power through the inverter, as well as a few more 2 watts going into everything else after the inverter. Okay, so 2 plus whatever gives it 10 watts. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now let me just turn off, let me unplug this thingamajig here, and we'll check the power. And see, the inverter idle power loss is about 3.7 watts. Okay, now if we turn off the inverter, okay, here goes. There we go. It's 3.7 watts, so I guess that's the power that's going into the capacitors inside the inverter. And let's disconnect the let's disconnect, well, where are we? The circuit breaker, which is this guy right here in the back. Okay, so we'll unplug this guy. That's this guy right here, 150 amp. Boop. Okay. And that's the discharge coming through from the inverter. So now we're at 3.7 watts that the battery has to provide for all the accessories like these displays and the fan. Turn off the fan. That's the charging fan. Should have turned that off before. So now if I turn off the fan, we have 1.2 watts. Now we're going to turn on, charge up the capacitor in the inverter. Okay, there we go. Okay, so 3.7 watts. Let's turn on the inverter power. Bam. Okay, so now we got power going into the inverter, but it's not on yet. Okay, and you can see 3.7. It's not on. We're going to turn this on. We're going to turn this off. Okay, and you can see 1.2 watts. Is that what we got? Okay, I had to turn the circuit breaker fully on. So basically we have 6, what is that? With the inverter on, no load, we have battery providing 3.7 watts of idle power. That feeds all the accessories inside the battery box as well as the inverter. Okay, so now we go ahead and hook up this guy. And you can see we got, the inverter is seeing 2 watts of extra load. So now we got a total of 10 watts that the battery is providing without the hairdryer running. Now we turn on the hairdryer to the low setting. Boom. And there we go. 670 watts hairdryer coming from the battery in order to provide 650 watts into the hairdryer. So 650 watts up to the hairdryer, 680 watts from the battery. So the efficiency is this, which is the 646 watts going into the hair dryer divided by 680. That is the efficiency, that ratio. Okay? Alright. Signing off. Let's turn off this thing. There we go. Goes back to 10 volts. 2 volts, 2 watts here, and 10 watts of idle power. That's called loss. Idle loss, idle power loss. With no load. Okay. That's PowerJack 1200 watt modified sine wave. This guy right here. Okay? And you can see this one has all these measurements, test measurements. 9.5 volts is the cutoff, the low voltage cutoff. When the battery reaches that level, it cuts off. And high level cutoff is what? What is that? .9 volts. No, 14.7 volts. Okay, so we can't go higher than that, otherwise it cuts off. Okay, so far so good. Here's our big cables. Okay, everything back here. And in here is our battery. Okay, there's 2 golf cart batteries, 12 volts each. Altogether 210 amp hours, which is 2400 watt hours. Okay, and there's a fan there to blow out all the corrosive and flammable fumes which are generated when the MPPT starts overcharging the battery when it gets above 13 volts, between 13 and 14.6 volts. So let's turn that on and see what happens. Okay. Boom. And you can see amps coming down from 400 watt solar panels. 400 watts. It's about, what time is it? About 2:30 Hawaii time. This is Manoa, Honolulu, Oahu. And it's a sunny day. Right now we got 5 watts coming down. And this has no load, so you can see 5 amps coming down from there, and so the same 5 amps is pumping into and replenishing lost amps from the batteries. So basically we have 71 watts going into the batteries. You see the positive sign, and we have 75 watts coming down from the solar panels. 70, it's fluctuating. So comes down through here and then down through that cable and into the battery. Okay.